Every level, capitalizing on atrocities that are going on the United States perpetrating.
It's better than everyone else's. We're the best on the worst thing, right?
Exactly, man. And that's exactly to your point. They fail on every level, capitalizing on atrocities that are going on the United States perpetrating. They cannot take advantage of any of this shit. Meanwhile, you have people in the Libertarian Party posting stuff on Facebook where they take out a clip of it and they share it, and that's what gets picked up for the media. They need someone to manage their actual appearance. And I know, look, we are, your words should be your words, right? What you stand for should be what you stand for. But we have to realize that in the society we live in right now, it is media driven. And we need to have a presence in the fucking media. We don't have a presence. We've got two people, you two. People ain't listen to my shit. Listen to Jason, Tesla, here. And we'll listen to Scott, but we need to have a presence so we can comment on this shit ongoing, because we have, like you said, we have the moral high ground, we have the positioning, we have the consistency that all these parties lack. And when Trump got elected, everyone, left and right, most of these people hate Trump. We have an opportunity now. People thought the libertarian moment was when this election happened, was Rand Paul. Fuck that. The libertarian movement is right goddamn now, because everybody's pissed off, and we're the only people that stay consistent ideologically and can say, that's fucked, and that's fucked. And we need to do something different.
McWilliams, everybody.
I'm drunk!
I think we should hand it over for a little Q&A since you guys all came out. Does anybody have any questions they want to bring up?
Hi, I'm Angela. I am the newly elected secretary of the California Libertarian Party. I 100% agree with you. It's a huge issue. Our media coverage fucking sucks. And it's something I'm going to work on really hard this year. Anyone here who wants to come at me with any recommendations for social media, I got the access in my purse. So please come and throw it at me, and I will welcome and appreciate your harshest criticism. I probably 100% agree with you, and that's why I worked my ass off to get where I'm at now. So throw it my way, please.
Oh, yeah. That is the sexiest pitch for libertarians.
Who else? Anybody else got a question?
Right here.
Right.
Say your name, your question, who's it for?
I'm Derek Porter.
Hey, we're not recording. So
Okay, your microphone.
You're a pro.
Come up to Crouch Michael here.
Yeah, I'm Derek Porter.
Hi, Derek Porter.
My question is for whoever wants to answer it. I'm still kind of debating within myself the best strategic move for liberty, as opposed to putting resources and time into political parties versus like agorism and grassroots education.
Podcasts.
What's your guys' because we all love Ron Paul, obviously. He worked from the inside. So what are your guys' strategic thoughts on agorism versus working political processes, which we all hate? So
Do what you want, man.
Yeah, you need to pick a seriously, pick a lane. Pick a lane. Pick a niche. Pick something that you're passionate about. I mean, Scott talks almost exclusively about war and foreign policy.
I've got a niche. I'm curious what everybody's niche is.
There's no right answer. You have to do whatever you are personally most excited about. Like, I'm excited about interviewing people in the libertarian community and putting out podcasts, so that's what I focus on 24/7. And other people might be really excited about running for office. Do that. Do whatever you're going to be excited about, not what you're going to feel like you're doing just to do. Don't do anything you're going to be like, okay, well, I just got to do these 7 things today. I got to. You have to focus on what you really are passionate about, because there's no way to have a all-encompassing strategy about changing the world, which is ultimately why we're all here in this fucking attic at 90 degrees, because you want to change the way people think about things, and you're not going to do that by yourself. So you got to really focus on what you are personally most happy to do.
I was going to add to that and just say, look, you need people everywhere. You need people talking about foreign policy. You need people running for office. You need people starting podcasts. You need people talking about economics. You need people everywhere. And the truth is, if you don't want to do any of that, we need people around the water cooler. That's what I talk a lot about. You change the world. You change the world one individual at a time, right? You change the world by affecting the way people think. And the way that you do that is by winning converts, and the way you do that is with the people in your own community. So when you take these ideas, the stuff that we talk about here, I mean, Scott's knowledge, one of the things I love about Scott, and I talk about him all the time on my show, is just the level of pull that he has, whatever you call the recall of the dates and the people and who wrote what and when they wrote it. I mean, it's insane. He has a talent and a skill for it that I don't have. I can't do that. I barely remember what we talked about after I get done with my show. I have to look over the notes.
Well, I got that. I just remember what I read.
Yeah,
It's like that movie, The
I don't remember what I just gave a speech about, and that's the question.
He took his shirt off. Jason has marker notes all over his arms.
Tattooed all over. But you get what I'm saying? Is that you need people at every level, and the idea is to if you're going to change the world, you do that one person at a time. And if you're not out there every single day advancing your ideas, I talk to a lot of people around Los Angeles, and they're nervous about what they believe. They're nervous to talk to other people about it. They're nervous about what people in their job's going to say, what people in their social circle are going to say. And the truth is, if you've got somebody who, there's always something you can align on. Like Scott said, you beat the left at their own game, you beat the right at their own game. So you just got to decide which side of the fence they're sitting on, because they're typically two-dimensional people. And I'm just serious. We tend to think politically two-dimensionally. We're either left or right. Okay, so you can align yourself either side of that, but you focus on, okay, what am I supposed to do? Fucking do something. Don't just fucking sit around.
Can I just add to that real quick? So I think that.
Did anyone record Jason's cursing just now? Because that's get that off. I'm on a show.
So your question was primarily about agorism, correct?
Well, more just curious what everybody is doing.
Okay.
Not if there's a good or a bad or a
Sure.
should. Just what are you doing? I'm curious.
Just to kind of reinforce what both of these guys were saying, is it's really about division of labor. You've read some of Rothbard, I'm assuming. So this is division of labor. Everyone's going to have a talent, a motivation to do something specific. I gave a speech. I was the backup keynote at Pork Fest for the Free State Project, their 10th anniversary a few years ago. Everybody knows Free State Project? Yep. Okay, yeah, so they're doing something specifically. And that speech was called How to Get From Zero to Rothbard. And it was basically an answer to your question, what do you do? And the answer is what these two guys have said. Pick something that you're motivated by, whether it's in New Hampshire, there's a well-known agorist who is selling baklava without government license. So I focused on highlighting on how people will learn in practice that if this guy does this and people don't die from some kind of disease eating his baklava, then maybe they learn that they don't need government in that part of their lives. So,
well, and I can tell you, for me, if you want to know my formula for it, okay, my formula is very simple. Become as popular and as well known as humanly possible. It's not a lie. Become as popular and as well known as humanly possible. So at whatever. So I just did this stupid TV show that the only reason I signed on to do it was I knew it would raise my profile. I knew that more people would know who I was, and I knew that if I got on, I'm going on Adam Carolla's show next week. I don't know when it'll air. No, thank you. But the point I'm making is, it gives me exposure. Now, why do I get that? I get that because I have a bigger circle of influence, right? So my whole goal is I make money, I do other things on the side in order to promote myself and raise my profile so that I can talk about the things that I'm passionate about and talk about what I really think will change the world. Because I'm big on helping people change their own lives. I'm big on coaching and helping people, whether it's business or finance or whatever. But my real passion is this idea that if we have these 5 principles and we promote these principles of limited government, individualism, peace, tolerance, and free markets, that we will create more wealth and more opportunity for more people than any other system ever tried to man. I truly believe that. It's a religion to me. Okay? And so for me, it's all about how do I raise my profile enough to be able to share that with the most amount of people. And so that's my shtick. That's my hook.
Well, let me just say one thing here. So yes, what I think you're basically what tack do you take, right? What tack should we take? Because libertarians as a whole, we say, voting, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, or it's complicit to acknowledging the state's power over you. Raise your hand here if Ron Paul is the reason that you are here today.
At least, yeah, partially.
I'm actually shocked, right? I'm shocked that it's that few people. And to those of you that Ron Paul did not inspire, well, goddamn, you motherfuckers are woke.
Some people just got friends.
You're Kanye. But let me make. But the point I'm trying to make is that while we reject the state, while we reject voting, we say, okay, voting, you're acknowledging the state's power, you're acknowledging somebody's power over you. at the current time, we have to acknowledge as libertarians, look, at the current time, this is the system we're operating in, okay? We need to have people that get into office that actually support our views. We have to support those people. And we need people, not lunatics running, not embarrassers. We need people that go into office that have a solid grasp of the issues, that can actually support our position. And that's what I think, like, look, obviously, talk to the people in your network. Talk to people you know. Most of you here, I'm sure, learned about libertarianism through someone else. Like, I have a friend here tonight who came here knowing jack shit about libertarianism.
Where are you?
But she came to learn libertarianism.
Relax us now.
But on a macro level, it's a fool's errand to.
On sale now for $20. Copies back here.
$10, Scott.
Let's get this next question
I
in.
really have to respect the amount of publicity, the amount of promotion you've done. Like I have to respect the sales.
Hey, look, if we're under the labor theory of value, then the universe owes me like $100,000 that goddamn thing.
Well, look, and I'll leave it with you guys. From my
I
perspective,
know we're not value subjective, but still, I can be a commie on this one thing.
Well, look, just one time. From my perspective, and I know, and I want to see what you guys think. You need to talk to your family, you need to talk to your neighbor, you need to talk to your community. But on a political level, I'm sorry, you cannot say I'm not going to vote, because that right now is the reality we fucking live in.
He's drunk. It's alright. I've never voted. He's saying I've never voted.
For what?
Never.
All right, who's next?
Next question.
If you want to live in a fucking fantasy world, you do that. I'm living in reality right now. You need to influence the system as it exists until we can have a new system.
In
And if you
California?
don't think, well, in California, we're all fucked. That's why we're all here. That's why they didn't turn the air conditioning on in this goddamn room.
We got 88 degrees.
All right, Josh Morsack, live in Norwalk. I'm a commissioner in my city, actually. And one of the things that I would like to see more of, I mean, we talk a lot about stuff on the national level and so forth, but you don't see a lot of stuff locally. And I've already told my council member, if I get in there or you're grooming me to get in there, I'm going to be a bull in a china shop. I'm a volunteerist, agorist from life experiences and stuff, and I would love to see more of that on a local level from you guys, man, because I've been listening to you for a while now, man. I was one of the first. I don't comment a lot in the Facebook group.
Yeah, you've been around a long time.
I've been around
I
a
recognize
long
you
time.
instantly. Yeah, you're
Right away, Josh,
Yeah.
you're River Farm and
And
other
my
stuff.
podcast
Yes,
for
I do.
Dave.
She hates it when I listen to stuff and I multitask. My wife. Yes, I'm popping podcasts and multitasking, cleaning stuff, messing with my urban farm and other stuff on my days off.
Baby, you want some bacon and liberty?
Oh yeah, man, here it is, man. And but I would love to see more of that on a local level. And I know it's you guys all have your niches and stuff like that, but man, if we can get that going, man, that'd be huge because there's a lot of people. But like you said earlier, people are afraid to fucking say stuff straight up, and I'm unapologetic.
Are you talking about agriculture,
No.
urban farming?
No,
Is that what
not
you're
that,
talking
but
about?
no.
Okay.
But that's my thing also.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about the libertarian values and morals and principles and stuff like that.
Right.
But you don't hear that on a local level, which I would love to hear more of from people. Be unapologetic. What's going to happen to you? People are going to unfriend you, or who gives a shit, right? My inner circle has gotten so much smaller. I mean, we have four kids, but it's tighter, and people know who I am. I'm genuine. I don't bullshit, and I am who I am. But I would love to hear more of that, and that. I mean, that's all And you guys already are there, and let's get it going, man. Because all these people here, man. Thank you for coming out.
Well, look,
it's awesome, man.
Security,
Here's the thing. I would love it if more people spoke up in around their offices, around in their social circles about what they believe. But the fact is, I don't want anybody to lose their job. I don't want anybody. Look, we all got to eat,
Yes.
and you got to make those decisions for yourself. I'm just saying there is a way to communicate your message and to start to wear on people in a positive way without being abrasive. And so that's I understand entirely. No, I understand entirely what you're saying. I get you what you're saying. But I'm just saying I'm very happy for. It warms the cockles of my dark heart to see anybody promoting what they believe and the ideas they believe in a positive way to try and move people closer towards the idea of liberty. It really is, because I do think it has value. I think it has much more value than any other political philosophy out there. So for those of you who, who are just dipping your toe in the water, just continue to push forward. This is a game of inches we play, and we're not going to get where we want to go by taking huge leaps and bounds. It's a claw many times, but the fact that you guys are out there doing the groundwork is what makes the difference.
I used to love Phil Donahue, so I'm excited about this. Man, your name?
Wow, this is awesome. I've known your name for a long time. All right, so Jill, you have a question for Scott?
Scott, I want to know what I can do tonight and tomorrow to counter all this idiotic talk about Iran and redoing the stupid nuclear deal.
Yeah. You can't do anything. But you can. You can't do it. Put that on a poster. You can't.
That's my next meme. Jason,
you can't do it. No, look. Ultimately, all you can do is communicate the truth, and to as many people as you can. Because the people in Congress, Scott's been screaming into a microphone. Not screaming. I'm sorry about that. But he's been talking into a microphone for years about what's been going on, and like I said, it's nice to say one person can change the world, but the truth is it takes all of us. It takes all of us on a consistent basis, sharing what we know and telling the truth. And one of the beautiful things about what we believe is that I say there's no reason to yell, there's no reason to argue. You have the truth on your side. Like what you have the truth. In the arena of ideas, we cannot be defeated. So all you need to do is tell the truth. Everywhere you go, to everyone you talk to. And if you're willing to do that, then over time what we do is we build a movement that way. That's something the Libertarian Party has been unable to do. They've been unable to build a movement. They've been very, very good at keeping a party together, very, very bad at generating a movement. That's our job. That's what we do. And then if we do that, then we will control the Libertarian Party and we'll be able to move them where we want them to go.
Marc, you got something to add to that? That's it.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, I think my approach really is I try to beat people over the head with the facts, but also just scorn any scaremongering or warmongering against any foreign state. The Prime Minister of Israel made some claims last week, did he? Why should any of us give that guy or his claims the benefit of the doubt instead of just looking at it the other way around? And this is sort of an answer to your question too about how to approach things that, and I failed to live up to this myself. I'm more of just a names and a dates kind of a guy, as he was saying. But what's really most important is that people get the right impression. And it's all just kind of social psychology, right? So if you have some war hawk and then he finds out that his uncle is anti-war, then he'll be like, oh. And you know what I mean? Because his favorite uncle.
Well, Scott, that's it.
It's not a factual thing. It's a matter of kind of psychology. So I think if you, and this goes back to attacking the right from the right and the left from the left. And I think, libertarians in general tend to talk about very first world problems, but when most of the problems of the third world are coming from what the USA is doing to them rather than for them and that kind of thing, then I think focusing on that and showing that we care about the worst unfairness that's going on and being perpetrated, sets a good example for where we're coming from and can have an influence on people. And then when it comes to the wars, doesn't it kind of strike you, right? Like if Netanyahu makes some claims and everyone around you goes, wow, I guess he really got him this time, then that's different than if everybody in the room goes, oh yeah, right, tell me another one. I've heard this before, because just as who you're giving the benefit of the doubt or who you're under the impression other people think is most credible in this circumstance or whatever. And that kind of thing is far more powerful than we really realize. It's just the denial of the legitimacy of these people. And I can tell you factually, and we'll of course have Gareth Porter on the radio show tomorrow morning to explain in detail why Netanyahu is of course completely full of shit about the Iranian alleged studies documents and all this stuff. It's not true. But probably more powerful than that is people kind of getting the impression from my interview of Gareth or from you or whoever, where should go, talking about it, that it's really just not believable, is it? You know, if the Iranians were making nuclear bombs since 1985, wouldn't they have at least one by now? What the hell?
They have one slow child
Actually,
working
it's
on
just,
it.
yeah, no, it's just the Israelis have been telling the same lies since 1985. That's all it is. You shouldn't be any more impressed now than you were then. And so, I think, you know, that's kind of, I hate to admit that it's true because it's not the business I'm in, but a good song or the right quip from the right movie star or something like that will always have a much greater effect even for accomplishing my goals than all the work that I can put into it. You know what I mean? When people make the claims that, oh, poor Israel has to defend themselves from Palestinian aggression, and everyone in the room just says, yeah, go fuck yourself, that's shit. That then, at some point, then that means the times actually have changed. That impressions have shifted, now understandings are different, and that things have to proceed in a different way. So, you know, that's really the name of the game, is if you really want to influence people, it's influencing how they feel about things and influencing the way they look at things rather than, you know, so what I guess my part in that is like, no, hey, there's this radio show where you can learn all these details. But the point is at the end of the details, you will be under the correct impression that the latest round of lies were in fact just that, you know, I hope.
It's interesting. You start off saying like you hit people with hard facts, which you do, and you have an incredible ability to do that. But you ended on what I think is actually the key to communicating libertarian ideals, especially to the left. With the right, you can argue fact, you can argue figures, and it works.
Really? With right wing?
Well, now John McCain.
They're also very. John McCain's a centrist. I'm not going to argue about how bad right wingers are with you right now.
I'm generalizing.
Okay.
I will say that as a guy who has talked to many people who are on the right that I've been able to convert to libertarianism.
Are they here?
Yeah, right there. Man. But when you talk about feelings, that's the thing. Is like with the left, it's all about feeling. It's connected to an issue that they associate.
This is totally wrong. It's for everyone. For everyone. Look at. Did you guys see?
You're never coming back.
Did you guys ever see the South Park episode about Iraq War II? In the South Park episode about Iraq War II, it wasn't about Saddam Hussein at all. It had nothing to do with ties to Al-Qaeda or weapons of mass destruction. The question was, do you like country or do you like rock and roll? And if you like country, then you like George Bush, and you're fucking dumb enough to believe that Saddam Hussein is in an Axis alliance with Osama and the Ayatollah too, for that matter. And everyone to the left of you, or every libertarian who says otherwise, is a traitor to America for knowing better too. You can't get dumber than we have to attack Saddam before he attacks us. You're wrong in saying they're different from the left that way. I'm saying their feelings, they're just as emotionally attached to their political leaders and their partisan issues as left-wingers are, and maybe even more so depending on the issue. Certainly on matters of war, certainly on the matter of a cop just straight executing a guy on camera, and every right-winger in the world is willing to like give up his own son in defense of the fucking cop.
All right, well, fine. Look. You can say that I'm wrong.
So you have to appeal to their feelings and say, don't you think we're wasting money trying to help all these brown people that you despise? And then they'll go, yeah, this is bad for the budget. And they
Remember, I started by
kill
saying
each other anyway.
that sometimes we argue.
We do argue. Well, look.
gotta attack the right from the right,
Let me get a word in here. I know you got the rants. You got the rants. I've already been booed once tonight. Let's make it two. Look, I'm sorry. Like I understand where you're coming from. It's all core feelings, but the left tends to come from a place. I've read a lot of goddamn research into this shit, man. The left comes from a place. It is feelings. It is emotional connection. When you're talking to people, if we're talking libertarianism, you can throw stats at them all fucking day, and I've done it. And you know what happens? They don't give a shit.
Oh, I didn't say liberals were rational. I said conservatives were just as irrational.
No. Okay.
That was all I said.
Well, okay, fine. Well, let's see.
Did I say anything in favor of the left's thinking skills or processing?
Dude, my whole point is I'm talking the way that you reach different perspectives. For me, it's much easier talking to people on the right when I can use facts and figures and show them, look, this is wrong, this is fucked, it's not working. On the left, you have to appeal to feelings. Like, look at education or welfare, for example. I just talked to those liberal motherfuckers in the world a week ago, And
but pick a conservative issue. Try to argue from the left against the right wing.
We now have a
right wing
question
issue like
line.
cops or
but I'm
wars.
not arguing from the
Yeah,
left.
you're
I'm
talking
arguing
about. You're talking about. It's easy.
God, they're gonna fight in the parking lot.
It's easy to convince a right winger on spending issues, yeah, because they already lean that way. I'm saying come at them on Iraq War II. It'll take them 8 years or 10 years to finally make it
I've
wrong about
convinced
that.
people on the war issue, and I find it's easier to convince them on that because
Hang on.
you look at the results of it.
Okay, all right. There are other people waiting to ask questions.
All right, let's do this. Let's do it. Family.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Next question.
Name.
I'm Cherie.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so I guess it was sort of related to that, but I wanted to touch on our support of Saudi Arabia, which some people easily point out, like with the feminists and the left, like how are you a feminist, blah blah blah, but you're not like, raising hell about the Saudis and their treatment of women. But more importantly, as far as like Trump is concerned and the right, immigration issues and the Middle East and Israel and religion. So there's a lot of people on the right that you can't rationalize with as far as facts go, and like the economy issues as far as war is concerned and how much it's costing us, because they have a belief that we are fighting for Israel and that this is God's plan, and no matter what, we need to support Israel.
Just give them some facts and figures.
Right, so, but at the same time, so it's kind of like, so I was just wondering, the elevator speech, because it's very obvious that just like with the left, we're supporting these people and we're supporting Israel, and I want to just like record you saying some very obvious things, like how like how does this make sense? Because on Twitter, I have a lot of people on the right, and they just like love Trump, they love all this stuff, but they're against Muslims, and all of a sudden we're supporting Saudi Arabia. And how does that even work? And it's the same for the left. So I don't think they are rational. It is completely about feelings, but it's even harder on the right, as opposed to what you're saying for me, because you're dealing with religion and something, a higher power, greater Israel, that you don't know about. But anyways, there's some bigger things there.
Well, so with Saudi, I mean, it's, I guess, probably tied with America.
I guess you got to hold. She wants to record this.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll give you a second.
And I also want to say that we have like a couple more hours with Scott, and it would be my wish that he could just talk all the way until 8 o'clock. But I'm just saying that...
I limit at 8 o'clock. If Scott talk before...
Marc, in here, or we can take a break out on the balcony?
Probably should buy him another drink.
Like, we have him privately, so I'm just saying this is like worth money. But I'm very thankful anyways.
Thanks. All right, well, so Saudi is probably tied with the United States for most corrupt country in the world. And it's what Henry Clay called the American system, right? Where rich people bribe the government to give them even more money, that then they use a small fraction of that to bribe the government some more, and around they go. And that's the way it has been, and especially post-World War II in America, the permanent arms industry that was built up to fight that war has never since been abolished. Oh, got a problem? Got it. I always hit the button and turn it off accidentally.
You're good.
Got it? Alright, so, the Saudis basically, they produce nothing except they're sitting on a ton of oil. And it's really like a couple of feet under the ground, and it's what they call sweet crude, very light crude with very low pollutants. And they just pull it out of the ground for next to nothing, and they can sell it for unlimited amounts of cash money to the West and to our Asian allies, etc. And then they recycle some substantial portion of the revenue from those oil sales into one, U.S. government debt, and then two, the American arms industry. And so the American government gives about $4 billion in aid to Israel, and, well, that's given to Israel, it's the same thing. And they spend that money back on Lockheed products. And it's the same kind of thing. We don't give the direct aid to Saudi, but they have all this cash from selling oil to really primarily to our allies more than the United States. The U.S. actually gets a very small percentage from Saudi, but it's all our empire, basically. And so they take that money and they recycle it into arms sales. And so, especially from the point of view of Donald Trump, who is really not a laissez-faire guy, right? He's not an ideological capitalist. In fact, he's very much a crony capitalist. He's a skyscraper tycoon. And so all of his fortune comes from easy credit and eminent domain seizures and all these kind of crooked games. And so when he sees a direct infusion of X billion dollars from Saudi into the Texas economy, to him that's a pure plus, right? That money goes to Fort Worth to build F-16s, and he goes, look, we got billions. And he doesn't see, the way libertarian economists would say, the difference between the seen and the unseen, and that money is going actually for these weapons of destruction where it's really money wasted. That money could have been invested in something that would provide goods and services for people if the money had stayed in here, stayed in the U.S. in the first place, that kind of thing. And then the regime itself is, I guess, the most totalitarian regime on earth, tied with North Korea, I guess, for the absolute lawlessness of the police state there. They do beheadings, at least in the low hundreds every year, maybe sometimes more. They execute people for the slightest accusation of drug possession, much less selling it or anything like that. And including they execute people on charges of sorcery, as they did just a couple of years ago. And I know what you're thinking, right? That like, yeah, but nobody could ever possibly really be guilty of that because that's make-believe bullshit. But so, no, they execute people for that kind of thing. And it's madness. And so then we have a relationship that's a lot like that with the Israelis, where the Israelis put so much, and their partisans in the United States, put so much back into the American political system that, in a democratic republic, it's not the majority that rules, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. That's how it works.
Like AIPAC?
Like AIPAC. And so the Israel lobby, and AIPAC is really just the core of the Israel lobby, but the Israel lobby, you could include probably 10 think tanks in Washington, D.C. and New York, and sure, and all over the place. And if you ask just professional, like say congressional staff, somebody like that, kind of a nonpartisan, but just sort of take the temperature of the room kind of a question in Washington, D.C., they'll tell you that the Israel lobby is equally comparable. They don't think of it as a different animal. They say it's comparable to the NRA and to the AARP in terms of being the most productive and powerful lobbies in Washington, D.C., and they do work. And they do break the law, and Grant Smith has made a career out of writing books about them breaking the law, stealing weapons-grade uranium and everything else. But at the same time, they do work, the kind of work that we should envy when it comes with being organized enough that they can literally threaten a congressman's job, that if you don't do what we want, we will have your ass. And those congressmen can't turn to us and say, well, the Israel lobby's out for me, but I really believe in this, so you guys got my back, right? Because where the hell are we? We're nowhere. So they have their choice, is either get primaried next time, and the time after that, and the time after that until it works, or just go ahead and go along. And so the way it works on Capitol Hill is AIPAC writes up a bill, they send it to the congressmen and the senators, and they just sign it. And they don't even read the damn thing. The head of AIPAC told Jeffrey Goldberg back when he was at the New Yorker, he said, you see this napkin? At the end of the night, I could get 77 senators to sign this thing for me, to do whatever I want. And so that is a huge power of Israel in the United States and among the American organized Jewish community and lobbies in particularly Washington, D.C. And then among Republicans, you have somewhere around 80 million born-again Christians in America who have some version of the belief that modern-day Israel is part of the prophecy in the Bible for the return of Jesus. And on their timetable, nobody wants to die alone, right? So, but wouldn't it be really neat? You see the whole world go with you. So they're trying to force Jesus to come back sooner, and so part of that is wrapped up in the existence of Israel, modern day Israel. And in 1981 or 1980 thereabouts, Irving Kristol, the father of Bill Kristol, and one of the leading founding members of the neoconservative movement, had helped to arrange for millions of dollars to buy a jumbo jet for Jerry Falwell. And some American Jewish leaders who were liberals, civil rights liberals, were saying to him, hey, listen, like,
we hate Jerry Falwell, and we're terrified of this right-wing, born-again Christian agenda in America. And why are you doing this? And Irving Kristol said, well, it's their theology. Oh, and on top of that, they want Jesus to come back and kill all the Jews who won't convert for the final day. And so that's kind of really pushing it too far, don't you think, Irving? And Irving Kristol said, it's their theology, but it's our Israel. So, in other words, let these idiots believe whatever they want, as long as they provide political support on the American right for the modern nation-state Israel, which, after all, was founded by atheist communists who didn't even believe in the God that supposedly gave that land to Abraham back when anyway. Had nothing to do with that. The Zionist movement was a completely secular movement in its start, anyway, in that sense. But so that is a huge. So you have a huge percentage of money and influence and control in the Democratic Party on the part of American Jews who put loyalty to Israel very high in their priorities. And then on the right, you have not that many Jews who vote right-wing at all or spend much money donating to conservative causes, but you have 80 million born-again Christians who are lined up on the same side. And so it amounts to a major lock on pro-Israel policy in Washington, D.C. And there's a parade of congressmen who dared stick their neck out and say, well, this isn't right. I mean, I love you guys, and I vote along with you 9 out of 10 times, but not on this one. And then it's, a death mark. That's it. You're done. You're getting primaried in 2 years. You will not process that. Even if you vote with them the next 3 times, they won't forget. And they have and look, that's the way we're supposed to do politics too. If you're interested in doing politics, that's the way you have to do it. Is the people who actually have the power and influence have to need you. And if they don't need you, then they don't need to do what you want them to do. That's it. And I'm not saying I know how to accomplish that, but I'm saying the Saudis sure do, and the Israelis sure do, and it's just spend money on PR firms, spend money on think tanks, spend money on pseudo-academics to write up studies justifying their policies, and they can continue the whole thing on.
My point is we support both of them. So for so many of these Christians
that love Israel and think about God's plan, at the same time, we're supporting the Saudis. So, I mean, you can see the same to the left and the right, which you
well, of course, they'll immediately start regurgitating Israeli propaganda about how the real enemy is Iran, right? Even though it was a bunch of Saudis that knocked our towers down. And even though, the enemies that have killed the American people are people from countries that our government is far too close to and resent us for exactly that reason, they will say Iran, 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 because that's Israel's enemy, and that's all the propaganda they ever get. But of course, when we look at it, Iran never attacked the U.S. Hezbollah never attacked the U.S., right? But Iran, in fact, is the enemy of the U.S. in the Middle East. When the U.S. tries to dominate the entire Middle East and Persia is entirely independent, then they're a major stepping stone. And then, of course, when George Bush got rid of Saddam for them, that increased their power and influence in Iraq by 10 million%. And so now all the same people who lied us into war with Iraq are the same ones who can't stand it, that the Iranians are the ones who benefited from the war with Iraq more than anyone else. And that's part of why they launched the war in Syria, to try to limit Assad's government and push him out of power, because Assad was an ally of Iran. So this is like a consolation prize. Oops, we gave Baghdad to Iran's friends. Well, at least maybe we can take Damascus from them. But that only blew up in their face, because it created the Islamic State, which was a bridge too far for PR reasons. So then America had to launch Iraq War III, which again was on the side of the Shiites in Iraq, against to liberate the Sunni areas from the Islamic State. And in the same war, on the Syrian side of the former line, or the line where it is again anyway now, the Syrian government then turned to their friends, the Iranians and Hezbollah and Russia, to help them fight off the American-backed jihadists. And so, in fact, Obama started this thing in 2011 to try to weaken Iran and Syria, and all he's done is make them even more powerful. So everything that they do is, ever since Iraq War II, is out of frustration with the enhancement of power, of Iranian power, and all they keep doing is making Iran more and more powerful in their attempts to limit them. And so they make everything worse and worse, which gives them the motivation to try something else, which just makes things worse again. And seriously, if you watch TV and every single one of these hawks hawking it up about Iran and complaining specifically about Iran's influence in Iraq and Iran's influence in Syria, you will not find a single one of these people whose fault it isn't. They are the ones who did it. They are the ones who, in the words of the King of Saudi Arabia, handed Iraq to Iran on a golden platter, right? And in fact, more recently, the foreign minister from Saudi Arabia said to John Kerry, as though John Kerry wasn't in on it all along anyway, he said, our support for Daesh, that's ISIS, is our response to your support for the Dawa, which means the Iranian-backed Shiite parties that America put in power in Iraq. So, yeah, this huge own goal from the point of view of the American empire in launching Iraq War II. And then you have this desperate attempt to make up for that fact by, in fact, supporting a bunch of suicide bomber bin Ladenite terrorists, particularly in Syria, which has led to, complete chaos and the rise of ISIS and then the war against them and all the rest of that. So.
Next up, man.
Wait, one thing. So he just said Osama's son is now the head of Al Qaeda, and I'm not certain if that's true. I know Ayman al-Zawahiri would probably claim that he is or whatever, but I know that at least one of Osama bin Laden's sons is rising in the ranks of Al Qaeda and is trying to reinvigorate the whole thing. But I'll tell you a story about another one of Osama's sons, Omar bin Laden, who gave an interview to Rolling Stone magazine in 2010 and said he was in Afghanistan in 2001, and all in the run-up to the attack. And he said, after the election of 2000, when George Bush won the election, he said, my father was so happy. And here is a guy who, well, and look at it, not that he was afraid, oh man, this guy George Bush seems like a tough guy. It was good. This is a fake tough guy. This is a guy who will be easy to provoke into doing something stupid and into overreacting and being a puppet on my string. So here you have this guy with a group of 400 men and no power, and in exile on the ass end of the planet Earth from everywhere. No power and influence at all. His special operations forces, a team of 20 men, have to steal our planes to even have a weapon to blow up any of our targets with, right? And then he immediately puts George Bush under his command and the American military under his command, because exactly what he was trying to do was get George Bush to go to Afghanistan and to stay. And then, as Michael Scheuer, the former chief of the CIA's bin Laden unit, put it, Iraq War II was the hoped for but the unexpected gift to bin Laden. He wanted it, but it was like the bonus extra credit Christmas gift. And are you kidding me? You're going to get rid of, as he put it, the socialist infidel Saddam Hussein for me too? And turn the whole west of Iraq into Jihadistan for 8 years. And this is where Al Qaeda in Iraq came from and grew into the Islamic State. It's because of Iraq War II, which is exactly what bin Laden was hoping for. And the continuing war in Afghanistan, of course, is along the same lines. Giving us our own Vietnam, just as we had done to the Soviet Union in Afghanistan in the 80s after our own failure in the real Vietnam in the 1960s and 70s. Let's see if we can trick the Russians into bleeding themselves to bankruptcy, and it worked. And then bin Laden tries to do the same trick to us, and it works. And we do it again, even though give them their own Vietnam. That's the Americans' phrase. That was Walter Slocum and Zbigniew Brzezinski who came up with that in 1978. And it's the policy that we're now following and doing to ourselves. Hey, Kate.
Hey, big fan. Big
Hi.
fan of John's Hey, you as one of the leading intellectuals of the libertarian movement and trained Harvard historian Tom Woods and other historians like Anthony Fraser, what is exactly the problem with all of you not being able to tell the difference between liberal and left? Is that like a confusing
That's
thing?
not a problem of mine.
I know, but when are you gonna fix it? You're in charge, man. When are you gonna fix this problem?
No, that is a problem. I mean, I think to me it's a huge it's a revelation every day of just how absolutely ignorant conservatives are and right-wingers are when you see, Sean Hannity up there going, Dianne Feinstein in the far left, blah, blah, blah. He clearly has no idea what that even means at all, right? But in political spectrums, they all exist only in your mind. It's kind of a make-believe categorical thing for trying to understand. But there is a real big difference between to me, a liberal just means a Democrat voter with no principle whatsoever who would go along with anything, right? That's a liberal. And I guess there are closer to the center than that. There's just centrist, Hillary Clinton. Then there's one click to the left of her is the liberals. And a couple of clicks to the left of that is Glenn Greenwald and the progressives, who they believe in capitalism. Ultimately, they believe in private property and business, but they want a lot of regulation. They're basically democratic socialists. They want high taxation and huge welfare states, but not the nationalization of everything and whatever. And then to the left of them, there's about 10,000 kinds of communists. And they don't all call themselves communists, but there's anarcho-syndicalists. There's probably like 75 different break-off groups of the Maoists and of the Trotskyites and of the various kinds of Leninists. And some of them are completely worthless, and some of them are fucking awesome. Some of them are absolute tireless campaigners for truth and justice constantly, and are, absolutely valuable. And hate liberals for all the right reasons. When a liberal holds up like a female tank driver as the epitome of equality, that we can go and on an equal basis now a transgendered person can kill you many babies too, because that's only fair. A leftist sees right through Democrat shit like that and hates shit like that. So don't put them in charge of your agriculture policy. But when it comes to hating right-wingers, they're right about that about half the time. When it comes to hating liberals, they're really damn good on a lot. And I think they're important allies. And when it comes to, foreign policy, they're the ones who do the real journalism that we rely on. Simple as that. Real leftists are the only ones who give a shit enough to do the work. That's the truth, dude.
Jason, you want to have
Nope.
I want to ask the question to Marc and Brian as well as...
Okay, well, we'll wait for you. You can just stay here online. Just say your name and your question.
My name's Alan Pyatt. Before I get to my question, there's one point I'd like to make. You're talking about the foreign aid, and a lot of times, like for example, Egypt, the foreign aid never makes it to the target country.
Right.
And it's all military hardware, so it's essentially just a subsidy, a flat-out subsidy from U.S. taxpayers right into the military-industrial complex.
Exactly.
Now, as far as my question, we've had a lot of warnings, before we got to this point. I'm thinking particularly of Harry Elmer Barnes and his book, Perpetual War, Perpetual Peace, in which he talked about how the military-industrial complex literally prevented ideas from getting into the mainstream marketplace. Like, for example, people would publish a book, like for example, Robert Theobald's book, The Final Sinker at Pearl Harbor, I think it's called. He was right there. He was in all those hearings. He knew that was a setup. But of course, his book was published by a small publisher, which was out. So anyway, the military-industrial complex has they found all these ways to take control of the ideas that get into the marketplace. And of course, back in the day, that was really easy for them to do when we didn't have cable. We only had broadcast, on-air broadcast networks, and then cable came along, but unfortunately the news sources tended to be CNN and Fox instead of ABC. But then as then the internet came in and everything, and now it seems to me that it's becoming very much harder for the establishment, if you will, to control the ideas that are getting in the marketplace.
Absolutely, yeah.
At the same time, one of the things that we've had is because of the internet. I was just talking to Jill today. One of the things that we've had because of the internet is we're seeing this explosion of not just citizen journalists, but also bloggers and people giving their opinions. Well, to me, that's kind of parallel to what we had back in the American Revolution when we had the publishing explosion. And there were just pamphlets being printed right and left in order to express the ideas that were not mainstream, to try to make them mainstream, get them into the public, that sort of thing. So it seems to me that it's almost like sort of a race between the vision that Orwell, put forth, the future, the imagine of boot stamping on a human face paper, because it's so hard for us to get information when the elite tries to control the information points. But at the same time, it's being harder for them to do with more technology. It seems to me that we have and you talked about the things that we can do in the media now, but it seems to me that we really have an opportunity right now. and a danger also. You know, it's like we don't take it. If we miss this opportunity, we may be really screwed, and I mean seriously screwed.
Well, you know, I totally agree with you. I think things are really changing more and faster than people really could have anticipated. And you know, my favorite example of this is the Gaza slaughter in 2014, when American opinion polls, whenever the Israelis attack the Gazans, are always the poor little Israelis. But in 2014, it basically, TV didn't count. It all came down to Twitter and Facebook, and it all came down to retweets and shares. And at the end of the day, people were able to see the Palestinians' point of view really for the first time, and about just how unfair that fight was, and who was killing who, and who was starting what. And the opinion polls for the first time showed this major shift. It was really due to that one technology, you know, that Twitter retweet more than any other thing. Guy with a 3G phone goes, here they are destroying an apartment building, and then uploads it, and then retweet, and then blam, and you follow the graphs and whatever. And it's just a whole new day. No one's in control. I guess some kook at Twitter has an algorithm, but for the most part, you know, it's not being funneled through Peter Jennings editors and this kind of thing. And I think also, you know what, like just overall, the amount, even if you're like me and you're addicted to Twitter and it's just this non-stop garbage all day long, there's still so much good stuff in there from time to time. And if you just pay attention to foreign policy type news and what's going on in the world for any kind of period of time, I think that any of y'all would end up agreeing with me. I mean, assuming your sources aren't completely polluted with right-wing propaganda for the most part. And I think that people come up, you kind of can't help it. It's just obvious that it actually doesn't have to be this way at all. The world could be at peace. We don't have to have a Pentagon at all. We don't have to have a Navy at all. We don't have to have militarism at all. You know, at the end of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union fell apart, they were really saying, does anybody remember this? They were really saying, oh my God, are Japan and Germany going to come back and rise up and threaten the world order again? Right? Because the thing is, if you have a globe and you look at it, there's no enemies. You get all the way back around again and you can't find any bad guys. All of Europe, every power in Europe are our friends. The Russians, despite all the bullshit you hear, are no enemies of the United States whatsoever. At worst, they're, you know, adversaries in a strategic sense, but certainly no enemy of the U.S. China's our, of course, second biggest trading partner, and you know, a sixth of the world's population, and you know, coming from communism and doing better than we could have ever dreamed. And then what? Australia, they're part of the American Commonwealth. There's not a power in Africa to even name. India is basically, you know, it could be a power someday, but it's not even in a regional sense. They control their own independent subcontinent, but that's it. Brazil is kind of a dynamic economy, but they have no military force and have betrayed no inclination to dominate their neighbors in any sense whatsoever, and they keep spinning the globe. And look, you're already been all the way around again. That's it. You're out of even possible threats to the United States. And the only place in the world where you can find truly violent conflict destroying societies, it's America doing it. And in every single case, it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to. So this is not some new communist man utopian fantasy where no one ever has a war again and everything is just perfectly fine forever, and like, you know, like this guy Steven Pinker and all these guys who constantly sell nothing but roses and everything's perfectly great. But just the point is that everything that's really not getting better is because of America. And if America would just stop trying to be the dictatress of the world and let things be, then we've seen the success and we've seen the trend toward more and more self-government and freer markets everywhere in the world. You can ask, you know, Harry Brown or ask Ron Paul, and they'll tell you, of course, you don't need neoliberalism to bring the world libertarianism. You don't need, you know, the Democratic Institute to overthrow your government and create a crony capitalist system. You just need a real libertarian system in a place like America to show the world how it's done. And then guess what? Sell them freedom on the market, which we can do.
Yeah, I think to your point, for whatever time there is right now, the gatekeepers are gone. You're starting to see some come up on Twitter and YouTube where they're preventing people from monetizing content and making it more difficult for them to share content. But the truth is, for years and years and years, that wasn't the case. And as those people come in and start to squash free speech or squash ideas, because it's not really free speech, but squash ideas, something else will spring up in its stead. And so the nice thing about the internet, the nice thing about where we are today is that if you have a message and your message resonates with the world, you can gain an audience. There isn't that. So I think that's a very good thing. All right.
We're still waiting on a question where Brian's going to be here, right?
He's going to have to do it now.
Looks like the voter cut and ran, huh? Voters have been screwing us over for decades.
Sorry, somebody lured me in.
After this, I'm selling and signing books. Right over here.
All right, last question. Last question.
Free books.
I am also selling and signing Scott's books.
Very good. Free books. Free books.
Do you want an alternative?
I can use hand.
My signature will be much shorter.
Go ahead.
All right. So going back to the point of attacking the left from the left and the right from the right. Why don't we also do where we link up with the left on issues that we both agree on, like foreign policy. I'm picking up the Jimmy Dore show. Jimmy has a lot of good criticism on liberals, and so maybe you guys and Jason can try to either have them on or go on their show and speak on issues that we have common ground on, and not debate like how David Smith went on to this left. I forget who, but
Sam Cedars.
Sam Cedars. Yeah,
well.
that was horrible. It was just hard to watch, and I'd rather see common ground rather than debate. I think that would be more beneficial. And just one comment. Why don't we just stop calling it crony capitalism and call it corruption? Because that's really what it is.
Well, I'll answer that. First of all, I get a lot of people ask me, why don't you go on this guy's show, or why don't you bring this guy on, or whatever the case may be. I'll go on anybody's show and talk anytime they want to. So if there's somebody out there
That's how I met him.
Yeah, if there's somebody out there who wants to debate or who wants to find common ground, all they got to do is pick up the phone, because I will come on their show. I've come on little tiny shows. I go on big shows. It's one of the things I try to do is if I can work it into the schedule, I want to try and promote what it is that we believe. So at the end of the day, one of the things I try and do on my show in terms of bringing people on is that I try and find people that I think are interested or doing something interesting. So to me, it's not, there are other shows out there like Tom's show where bringing on it's just an interview show. And they bring on people and they interview them. For me, I really want to find somebody who's doing something unique and something that I'm interested in. Because if I'm not interested in what you're doing, if you're just another voice in the crowd, it's not going to be interesting to the audience because I'm not into it. So that's just the way I run my show. But I don't have any issue with trying. I'm big on finding common ground. My show is all about wherever you're at, whoever you're talking to, figure out what it is that you align on, and gain common ground that way. So I'm all in favor of that.
Well, let me say this. So I don't know how many of you listen to our show, but
Yes.
this guy.
Come stare it. You got one.
We got two people. But I had a guy on. I don't know if any of you, does anybody here watch the show Corporate on Comedy Central? Have you seen the show?
We're not getting into this Owen Benjamin shit
One
now.
person. No, we're not getting into Owen Benjamin shit.
It's very offensive.
I had a buddy on mine. He's a comedian. I do stand-up comedy in LA. I met this guy, reasonable leftist, right? And he is fucking leftist.
That's an oxymoron.
So I had him on, did a podcast where we had a reasonable conversation, which is what I advocate for libertarians to do. Find common ground, state your point, state why, and it's what I feel like. Attack the left and the left. Here's why. You want to support this? Well, you've been spending this much, it's done nothing. We need a different solution, right? Did this podcast with Jake. Jake Weissman's his name. And you know what happened after I did that podcast? Got attacked like a motherfucker. From who? Libertarians. What? That is fucked. Look, guys, we're all at the same cause. No, I had him on. Hold on.
Touch those buttons.
I don't know what to do with these buttons. Let's see which.
I got you.
Try this one. Go, this guy.
For going on the leftist show?
No, wait, we're gonna do this. We got this, guys.
For having a leftist on your show?
Oh, nailed it. No, still not. Here, yeah, for having left this on my show, exactly. And that's the thing, like, so I do a show called Election Liberty. It's a lighter take on liberty, right? It's not supposed to be hardcore, although I get fired up. The point is, people attack the shit out of me for having this person on and be like, you should have gone after him. You should have attacked him on this, attacked him on this. Like, that is defeating the point. We're trying to find common ground. We're trying to find converse. We're trying to spread the ideals of liberty. And the worst way to do that is by talking to somebody and telling them they're a fucking idiot. It doesn't work, guys. It doesn't.
In fairness, you call me an idiot all the time.
Well, and look, we're not even trying to spread the ideas of liberty. We're trying to spread actual liberty. So if that requires that we convert every leftist and liberal to libertarianism and every conservative to libertarianism first, then we lose, right? But we can help them prioritize in the places where they agree with us. If we really want liberty, then that means ending the drug war and ending the persecution of a lot of people who've never heard the word libertarianism before. We don't give a shit about that. That's not about us. It's about they're being treated unfairly. Something's feedbacking and sounds terrible. But yeah. Wait, and you know what? The blonde, I'm sorry, back there at the bar who's not looking. You had a question, right? I'm sorry, I was still blabbing on when you were trying to ask.
Let me get the mic real quick.
You have to go to the front.
I just wanted to ask you guys.
Come on, Penny, grab a mic.
Hello, I'm the one poet that I know jack shit as Brian.
No, it's alright. You said it's your first day, right?
You're allowed to know Jack.
No, I was just wondering from all of you guys, like, what do you find to be the most accurate news sources that are the least skewed? Like, I know.
Antiwar.com.
But it seems like,
We're very skewed, but we got it right.
and Democrats, it seems like choose, you know, what news sources they think are the most correct. And with you guys in this party, what do you?
I actually think what Scott said earlier about Twitter is actually very accurate because you can find a lot of information on Twitter and you can sort of filter it yourself. I mean, obviously we can cancel out CNN, Fox News, and all of these cable, corporate, government-tied organizations immediately off our list. Brian, stop touching.
You're welcome.
I'm not appreciative of your button touching. But I mean, filtering through information from your sources of human beings that you have met and interacted with in real life, to me, is the best way to filter news. And you know, I think that's kind of what you were saying earlier.
And you know what, honestly, if you just get in the habit of reading all the time on whatever your subject is, if you decide you're interested in one war over the others, or if you decide you're interested in whatever kind of tax policy, whatever, it's just like with anything else, just like a new job that you get or anything. You spend a few weeks looking at the same thing and you kind of get it. You know, learning about Iran's nuclear program and the non-proliferation treaty is a real pain in the ass for about a week. And then after that, it's not. After that, it's easy, right? It's just, but it takes a minute to do the work.
And you can find consistency over sources when you do that, what you're saying over time. When you read everything about the non-Iran or whatever issue you're interested in, or Yemen or what have you, when you read everything about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, you are your own filter at that point. You can start to see who's biased. You can start to see who's more credible.
Well, like, look,
It's just practice. It's just like any other job. If you start a job, you suck at it for 2 weeks, basically, until they get you good and trained up, and you know how to do it. That's also, this is your new job, is like figuring out what to read, you know? At the New Yorker, sometimes they have interesting long-form stories, but they're a bunch of real stuck-up, rich, liberal, Upper East Side, New York, whatever people. Over at the Atlantic, they're always evil 100% of the time. Over at the National Review, the same, right? And then you figure it out.
The point I just want to make is that, look, as libertarians, we often criticize you for being in bubbles, right? You live in your bubble, the Democratic bubble, the neocon bubble, the Republican bubble. Read shit you don't agree with, okay? Read shit you don't agree with, right? Know thine enemy. Read it when you don't agree with.
And there's a lot of great progressive sources about foreign policy as well. So that, I mean, it doesn't even mean it's wrong. That's where you can find right information a lot of the time because they're trying to oppose the bullshit that is going on in the world.
Like, read
it. We come from different viewpoints.
Read what you agree with. Read what you don't agree with. Read what you do agree with. Like, look, Syria, right? Every mass media source, when we bombed Syria, they were like, huzzah! Thumbs up. Yeah, exactly. Facebook fucking thumbs up. Everyone. Read everything. Read Zero Hedge, read Anti-War, but read shit you don't agree with. Force yourself to do it. Swallow your bile, because you need to know what your opponent's argument is if you're going to address it. I know it's kind of something.
Books.
Well, I should have followed actually, like, how do you know what's true? And that I think it is a difficult thing when we're learning about foreign policy.
And
Because everything does come from other
or
sources.
not even foreign policy about anything. Just take your time, right? You don't have to believe everything that you think. You go, oh, okay, well that makes sense, but I guess I'll withhold judgment until I learn something else.
But that's why you should read everything, right?
Yeah, and then at some point you realize that, you know, when you're reading the New York Times, that like Charlie Savage has some really good shit sometimes, but you'll come to find out that David Sanger is always bad in his lines. He was trying to cause a war for Israel. So, but it just takes practice, right? It's just like with anything else. You get a handle pretty quick on what fits with what you think you already knew. And sometimes you really have to change your mind about what you thought you knew. And sometimes, nah, you know you're right and the new information must be rejected because it doesn't comport with what you already know that you know. And you just do your best, the same as if it was about anything else, you know?
Can I just say one more thing? Thank you all for coming. We're fucking done. We're done.
Plenty of mingling and balcony time.
I got a card reader. I can take your cards even.
So people are walking on
Trying to break even.